Thank you very much. Our next presenter is the Director of Technology, Media and Telecommunication at PricewaterhouseCoopers. He has been engaged in the field of consulting for more than 10 years and has conducted several businesses and IT projects in Hungary, the Central European region, and in Africa. Also has an extensive experience in business strategy, corporate transformation, and customer experience management, also in quality assurance. And nevertheless, he's a hardcore Counter-Strike player for 1.2 version. Please welcome Miklós Zaránd.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to present in such a nice conference and in such a nice arena about a topic which is very important to me. I'm going to talk about 7 trends influencing esports, and at the end, I'll try to summarize what you have to pay attention to concerning these trends. First of all, I'd like to emphasize that esports is growing at a frantic pace, and we are developing quite fast. You can see that 3/4 of budgets are going to brands, sponsoring, advertisements, and media rights. Later, I'm going to talk about this. It might increase. On the right side, you can see that the number of viewers is increasing very fast. Currently, it's around 400 million, but by 2020, it's going to double. And here we have hardcore fans and viewers who only view it sometimes, so it is half and a half. The next trend shows that there are huge capacities, marketing capacities in this industry. Here we can see that currently in esports, spending per viewer is very low, but there are very big potentials in this. On the other figure, you can see the age pyramid, and you can see that 69% of viewers are between the ages of 18 and 34. This is the Y and Z generations. They will have a very important role in the future, so we need to target this audience. Also, it's very important that this age pyramid is changing. Older and older people are involved in gaming. Earlier, it was impossible to play a Counter-Strike for like 40-year-old people, but today it is already possible. So this age pyramid is changing, and this is something very important. This goes hand in hand with the so-called non-endemic brand advertisers. There are more and more so-called traditional brands involved, and we registered around 600 sponsorship agreements from 2016 on, and it's very important that around half of this is non-endemic. This is a segment with a high purchasing power. I'd like to start it again. So this segment has disappeared from traditional channels. Why? Because people don't watch TV. They use ad block on the internet. They are not interested in traditional channels, and you can only reach them in the internet, through the internet. So, for example, last week I talked with the Gillette communication manager of Gillette, and he said that for them it was very important to enter this advertising scene because the players are global. It's not global, local audience, but they're targeting an international audience with the gamers. Now I'd like to talk about regulations. This industry goes from unregulated towards a regulated environment. We talked about the fact that in Hungary we started to establish the esport strategy within the digital welfare strategy, and we also have an esport association. In France and in Norway, they already have legislation pertaining to esports. However, if we look at taxation, it is not well developed yet. Even in the US, it's not well developed. In Hungary, we already have a position paper about taxation of sports. Let's hope that sooner or later we'll be able to establish something for esports, although here I have to mention that esport is not official sport yet in Hungary. If we talk about gambling, well, this is not well regulated within the environment of esports yet, although we would need regulations because it is a very shaky ground. For example, Daniel is going to later talk about the question of loot boxes. We are going to talk about this later. And here we have to mention child protection as well. All of these games are games from official companies who pay attention to the rules, because in America we have serious rules for that, and we have an age limit. So this is more or less well regulated. At the beginning of esports, it was more similar to South Park's World of Warcraft episode, and it was entertainment for a very thin layer, small group of people. But it is radically changing, and there are more and more events where you can meet esports athletes in person. And this trend is going to be continued, and it's very important to point out here that next to market factors, market criteria, there are other industries built upon esports, for example, catering and tourism. So this is going to further enhance the prevalence of on-site games. Gambling it is very difficult to measure gambling within esports because all of the big offices provide esports bettings, and there are offices which provide only esport betting, but there's a so-called secondary market where you can buy CSGO skins, and this is a secondary market where you can buy and sell these things gained from loot boxes. And there are some scandals around here. Last week, a betting office and a pro gamer were arrested due to a match in November of 2017 where there was fraud involved. So these things limit the development of esports, but still we are waiting for growth in the future. Traditional sports federations have started to establish esports leagues as well. This trend started around 2015, and currently there are already a lot of sports clubs which have esports leagues. And this, for example, MTK, DVTK were the first ones in Hungary who established an esports league, and also FTC in Hungary. Later, we also have a panel discussion, and we also talk about why it's worth getting into this business.
One extra thing to consider, we've done a social listening survey to see the opinion of people on social platforms about esports, and of course it's no surprise that people interested in esports are very active on social media. Poland is leading the charts, but for example in Hungary esports are more often mentioned than, for example, basketball. It's also true, for example, horse sports, which is considered to be a traditionally very important sport type in Hungary. And there is water polo, which is one of the most successful sports in Hungary, and it's only slightly ahead of esports mentions. And here on the next chart, you see how events influence esports mentions, and you see, for example, the importance of this conference as well. What you should pay attention to in 2018. Here I mentioned several things, but I would like to highlight only one. Marketing agencies should find the brands which are most willing to invest in esports, and they should find the channels, influencer streams, or sponsorship agreements which might provide the most help and support for advertisers. Government and regulatory bodies should speed up the legislative processes, and they should also pay attention how such an event could influence development plans. Investors should be ready to invest, because they should pay attention, focus on the point of singularity, where the whole market is going to boom. Sport clubs already have an example set in front of them. They should take a look at the different benchmarks, and they should take a look at what other similar sport clubs tried and what was successful. In case of media companies, they should establish presence in the region, and in case of telecom companies, they should provide B2B and B2C services for organizers and for pro gamers. Thank you very much for your attention, and feel free to contact me or my colleagues after the presentation. And I would like to highlight that we are going to publish a study which you can find on the page of PVC. It's going to be published in April. This QR code leads to that link, which is currently empty but will be uploaded in April. Thank you very much for your attention.